Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. Today, we're going to be doing a little reaction video to one of Travis Gafford's newest interviews. This one is with Vulcan, and obviously he has been a big talk of the League of Legends community in a lot of different ways recently. One, Cloud9 is 10-2. They're first place in the LCS. They're coming off a really good weekend. Vulcan's been playing like a beast, but also, obviously, he's had this very controversial back and forth with Reginald recently, and it's really weird because, obviously, he's kind of on one side of the argument, and his own owner, the guy writing his checks, is on one side of the argument, obviously, as well, with C9 Jack kind of being going the other way. So, today we're going to be reacting to Travis's interview, which is titled Vulcan's Reaction to Reginald's Tweet at Him, How Owners Should Fix NA. And I don't just want to continue to talk about the import discussion and situation until things kind of change, but I know that one of Vulcan's answers in this interview actually gives us way more detail, not just about the import situation, but about some of the past off seasons as well. And I know we like kind of that off season rumor speculation, stuff like that on this channel. So that's one of the reasons why I want to cover this interview, so we can talk about some of that stuff. With that being said, if you haven't already, make sure you drop a like on this video. Helps me out a ton. Subscribe if you have not already. With that being said, here we go. Let's see what Travis and Mr. Vulcan have to say. If we get to some boring parts, we'll skip through it. If we get some exciting parts, I'll stop and give my thoughts and opinions. Here we go.
Thanks so much for catching up with me. How are things with C9 so far? Because you are now we're over halfway into the split, which is crazy to say in week 4.
Trying to get the volume right.
But how happy are you with how the team is doing ahead of playoffs in just a couple weeks?
I'm pretty happy. I think we're progressing pretty well, and we're kind of expanding our champion pool and experimenting with different styles, like playing through top lane, ball lane, and stuff like that. And we obviously want to be a team that can be very versatile. So I like that we're experimenting a little bit. And yeah, obviously we're in first place, so it feels good to be here. But we did lose to Team Liquid last week, which was a pretty big loss, and it feels bad to lose to them, especially given the rivalry in the past few years. So that's disappointing, but overall, we're pretty satisfied with the way things are going right now.
So I do really love that answer from Vulcan in a lot of different ways. One, I think the experimentation thing is a huge thing here. Two, oftentimes all across the world, but especially in North America, we see teams that are able to do really successfully domestically, just like Cloud9's doing. 10-2 record right now. They're on top of the world. They're doing great, but they fall in love with one certain playstyle. They find that one playstyle that helps them dominate North America, and they just kind of fall in love with that. And then again, we see it time and time again. They get to MSI, they get to Worlds, they get to international competition, and teams are good enough to shut down that one-dimensional playstyle. Now, I think Cloud9 fortunately is in the boat where they can play a ton of different playstyles, at least at an LCS type level. Again, who knows how many of those playstyles are going to translate internationally, but at least getting them down, practicing them in the LCS, even in the short amount of games. People always say LCS only has 18 games. Some of these other regions have 54, whatever. But, I mean, we're seeing some crazy picks. We're seeing Perks on all different kinds of champions. He's played a LeBlanc game. He's played, some of the more standard stuff, like obviously Syndra and Azir, stuff like that. I mean, in Lock-In, we saw, an Akali and a Yone from him. We're seeing all different kinds of mid lane champions for Perks, even when, maybe some mid lane champions that other people aren't even playing right now. Obviously, Blabber has all different kinds of picks. They've had Perks even on more defensive stuff like Galio and Twisted Fate. They're really practicing all these different styles, and obviously having Perks being this guy who's played through all these different metas and played even different positions and stuff is really valuable. But they also just have a talented enough team where Vulcan can play so many different champions, Blabber, Perks. It really helps out a ton. And I think that is going to be something very valuable for Cloud9 going forward into the season. Not only does it help them in best of 5 drafts as far as just North American playoffs, but I think it helps them internationally as well, so teams can't really just key in on one certain player, one certain play style. They have a bunch of carries, they have a huge champion pools. That is going to be great. That is going to be beneficial.
One of the things that was interesting to me was this LCS circle of suck that was posted to Reddit that pointed out that in just a very short time, every team, you could make a circle out of all the teams that have lost to each other. It made me think a lot about last spring, where you guys were just wrecking and it seems so far distant. So how different does the LCS feel this spring? And is it a situation where everyone sucks, or is it a situation where actually the league is relatively good and everybody's taking games off each other that way?
All right, we're gonna get hit with an ad. So I think that is a great question by Travis. One, the circle of suck stuff is really funny. I was honestly gonna make a video about that. There was this circle to where you could make it so you could make the case that any team in the LCS was like the best team by having the circle. I mean, there was even CLG was like the best team because they had beat like Golden Guardians, who beat Immortals, who beat Cloud9, who beat 100 Thieves. Like it was this whole circle to where everyone's really beating everyone in the LCS. And that can be great in terms of domestically. It means everyone's pretty close. Games are competitive. You never know who's going to win. That can keep things interesting. That can keep things exciting. But also, we've seen historically that the LCS is maybe a tier below the LEC, then the LCK, then the LPL. So if all of our teams are close, if they're all bunched up, if they're all able to beat each other, then that hasn't necessarily meant good things internationally. Like, you really want a team dominating the LCS, because if a team is dominating the LCS, that means they are probably a class above all the teams, which means they are maybe in the class, and hopefully even a class above some of those other international teams. So while I do think it is good as a viewer of the LCS when teams are close, when teams are competitive, when you don't know who's going to win, I think it isn't necessarily the best thing internationally, because if we have 2 or 3 teams that are world class, that'd be great if they're all trading wins, but we don't have 6 or 7 world-class teams. We know that for certain. So we don't want everybody taking games off everybody. We want some of our top teams to be able to close out against some of them. But also, I do want to hear what Vulcan has to say in terms of, yes, is the LCS better than previously? Is it the same? Does everyone suck? Is everyone good? Like, what does he think? Obviously, it's just one man's opinion, but a pretty good person to get an opinion like this from.
I think the top tier teams are stronger this year than last year.
I would agree with that.
I don't know if I'd say that we're better than we were last year. I mean, obviously, I think we kind of had the meta downloaded last year, and we like all were very comfortable with the strong champs, so we were able to dominate. But the teams below us kind of suck compared to, I think right now, EG is pretty good. We haven't beaten them yet on stage, right? TL is good, even though the record might show otherwise. They're pretty good. TSM is looking at much stronger now than they did a couple of weeks ago. 100 Thieves obviously is a very strong team, and they kind of came off the gate swinging, So yeah, all these teams are pretty good, and they're giving us an actual challenge compared to last year where we could just kind of roll through everyone. And I think the league is just stronger right now. But I'd say maybe the bottom teams are worse than last year potentially, with all the rookie squads coming in, and so I think the top teams are better. The bottom teams may be weaker than last year.
Okay.
And that's how pretty much I would rate the teams as well. I mean, if you look back to the spring last year, and really even by the end of summer last year, we did not have very many good teams. Like, yes, people were saying Cloud9 was one of the best LCS teams of all time. I really did want to pump the brakes on that. I did not necessarily agree with that. I thought they were the best team in one of the weakest LCS splits we had maybe ever seen. But then again, even by summer, TSM won the summer split of the LCS, and then they go on to go 0-6 at Worlds. They were not that strong. FlyQuest, they were a very solid team. They should not have been the second best team in the LCS. And then Team Liquid, who I did think was pretty good, even them, they were only able to go 3-3 at Worlds, and they finished 3rd place in the summer. I think last year was overall a very weak showing for the LCS overall, and I think a lot of the top teams got better in the offseason and are now better in showing that in the spring split. But yes, the bottom teams are worse. Golden Guardian, CLG, even Immortals and FlyQuest, those 4 teams are kind of all messes, each in their own different way right now. But again, they're taking a chance on getting better in the future, which is a good thing, because if you're not going to be good right now, yeah, you could maybe sign some veterans and be a little bit better right now, but you're going to be way worse in the long run. And I think that's kind of what we saw with the LCS last year. Past couple of years, teams had not wanted to build towards the future, and eventually you were going to hit this wall where, the present sucks, and you haven't built up a future that's not going to suck, so it just ends up being a little bit weird. But teams are starting to figure that out a little bit, which I think is good for the future and good for right now, because I think we're better than last year.
Well, with assuming that Riot is able to make MSI happen this year, how hungry are you for that event, especially given what happened last year? Because obviously everybody wants it when Spring and Go, but I assume it might be really nice for Cloud9 to be able to attend, given that you weren't able to last year.
Yeah, I mean, I personally really want to go to MSI because we do feel kind of robbed from, our international tournament last year. Well, both, I guess. We robbed ourselves in the second one, but so we all really want to go. I know Luca obviously wants to, prove that he can elevate any team and be able to compete with the top international teams, and that's always been, a goal of mine to show that we can be competitive. So, it would be really nice. Really nice to go to MSI.
It would be.
I do think that Cloud9 not getting to go to MSI last year is obviously one of like the biggest what ifs in the LCS of all time, because at that time everyone, I mean not me and not everyone, but a lot of people were saying that that was the best looking North American team of all time, most dominant, strongest, best at playing the meta and stuff. So I really wish they would have got to go to MSI, because one of two things would have happened. Either they would have been the best LCS team of all time, and that would have been awesome. Maybe they go to the MSI finals, maybe they win MSI, something crazy, who knows? Or they get hard exposed, and then we just kind of know for certain how good they were in the history of things historically, and even in that at that time. That does just really, really suck that we did not get to see that, obviously.
It'd be crazy if after so many people were wondering.
I do want to skip ahead a little bit. I'm trying to get to the Reginald part.
I was just seeing a lot of, pretty much your videos highlighting the opinions of owners about the import rule or like the restrictions with the imports, and I felt like the owners were prioritizing like the wrong thing and wanting to import more players and basically saying like we don't have any talent and that's the main reason why we're unable to compete. But in my head, there are more pressing issues, and those are kind of the things that we should focus on now instead of demanding like more imports. I feel like the owners should demand that we have better solo queue environment and we don't play on 50 or 60 ping the whole year. And in my mind, that's one of the main reasons why people come over here and they look worse than they did in their own regions, because the practice is so much worse. And obviously you can't do much about the player base being smaller and the level of the solo queue being lower, but I'm sure the ping is a problem that can be solved. And I think the point that Double Diff brought up last year about I think he said if you have like 6 players or the majority of your players in your game are on the West Coast, then you just play on a server that's in LA, right?
Right.
And then
And yeah, I think that would be an interesting take. I mean, obviously other games have done stuff like that before. I think that would be interesting. But I do like how he brings up the fact, and he said this in one of his tweets as well, that like, take Damwon Gaming, put them in the United States, put them on 60, 70, whatever the players play on ping for the course of the year. Not only that, but then have them scrim against LCS teams, play in the LCS with the LCS schedule and all that stuff going on. And then would Damwon Gaming still be the best team in the world by the end of the season? I don't think so. I mean, and a lot of people don't think so, because there's just so many differences between the solo queue, the coaching staffs. I mean, that's another thing. Give them an NA coaching staff, give them an NA organization, general manager, owner. Like, there's so many different things that North America does worse than some of these other regions, to where, yeah, it's not just as simple as bring Damwon over to North America, have Steve write a check and buy the entire Damwon Gaming roster. I bet under Team Liquid's name and banner that Damwon Gaming would look and probably perform a little bit worse. And I think that's what Vulcan talking about, that yes, you could bring in more imports. Obviously, it would raise the level of play to some extent, but that is overall a Band-Aid fix. And I definitely agree with him there.
now, if you have a game full of pros, then you're still playing on like, I don't know, mid or East Coast, like Chicago server, and you're all playing on 60 pings while you're all like basically in the same city, and it doesn't make much sense, right?
Yeah,
so
that is definitely dumb.
In my head, like those kind of things are things that should be solved before we think about importing more players.
And yeah, I do think that is really, really silly. Like he said, if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 pro players in a game and they're all living in Los Angeles, why is that game being played on 60 ping when, I mean, you could literally be next door to someone. You could be down the street and you're playing on 60 ping. Like, yes, that does suck. Obviously, it'd be a lot of stuff to work on. Obviously, Riot would have to make some big changes to how the servers are set up, how the game even functions and everything. But again, if this is something that the owners care about, if they do want to put time, money, effort into arguing about something, making some changes, maybe make some changes that make a little bit more sense or maybe a little bit more realistic, like what Vulcan's talking about, because we know these things are possible. Maybe Riot doesn't want to do it, maybe they wouldn't do it, but I think it would probably be a better, at least short-term fix than some of the changes that the owners are proposing.
Okay, so then you made the tweet, and then a team owner for TSM ends up
getting into the spicy stuff.
And ends up kind of getting dogged on. But what was your reaction when you saw the tweet come him? Because I think you kind of played it off like a joke in your reply, and sort of spawned this McDonald's.
He had such a good
thing.
response.
So,
the McDonald's thing is so good.
What was your reaction when you saw that?
All-time classic
and,
line.
How did you decide to reply, etc.?
I mean, I was kind of, I don't know, surprised. I was like, what the hell? How can you say this to me? Like, it was a bit crazy at first, and then I wanted to come up with a reply to him because I wanted to prove or like show how ridiculous it was of an answer to say to me, and I felt like it was kind of crazy that he would say that given the amount of times he tried to sign me or tried to poach me. So in my mind, that was a a bit insane that I would say like I'd be out of the job. I don't know. So I had to reply, and then when he made his tweet, I felt like I had to ratio in some way, and it just had to be done. So
The ratio.
So that is so funny to me, and that was honestly one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this interview even in the first place. The fact that Vulcan drops a bomb in this interview talking about, I can't believe Reggie would say that to me when he's tried to sign me so many times. He's tried to poach me so many times. And on one hand, I'm like, yeah, that's not very surprising. You know, TSM wanting to sign one of the best NA import supports out there, you know, not super surprising. But again, when you see how Reggie was talking to Vulcan like this, it maybe does make it a little bit more surprising, or maybe Reggie's a little bit salty that Vulcan, you know, hadn't gone with him before, hadn't come over to TSM, but also it gets you thinking that, yeah, maybe a guy like Vulcan wouldn't want to come to TSM when you have an owner that's willing to act like that, when you have an owner that is willing to talk like that to people, and Reggie now could have potentially burned a bridge for the future, because obviously Vulcan is not going to be done in the LCS anytime soon, TSM's not going away anytime soon, so why would your owner be taking shots at players out there in the open, especially about a matter that has nothing to do with anyone, and now, yeah, TSM, maybe they were never going to get Vulcan anyway, you know, probably they weren't even going to get Vulcan anyway, but it does seem weird that a guy that you're trying to sign, you would then kind of attack like that on Twitter, but it does get me thinking, like, yes, there were definitely many opportunities where Vulcan to TSM would have made so much sense, and it would have been so disgusting as well. It would have been so crazy. I mean, obviously when he went to Cloud9, I think that was, what, 2 off seasons ago at this point, when he was coming over from Clutch Gaming, yeah, getting him then on TSM would have been absolutely crazy. I mean, thinking about all the different 80 carries that TSM has had that Vulcan could have been paired up with, like, obviously Vulcan and Doublelift together, especially in Doublelift's prime, that would have been so disgusting. That would have been so cool to watch. But then even like Vulcan and a guy like Kabe would have been interesting. And it just would have put TSM in such a better position. Like TSM with Vulcan, you know, they wouldn't have had to import somebody like Sword Art. They wouldn't have had to lose somebody like Broken Blade. They could have, you know, continued to import in the top lane. Also, Vulcan getting to pair up with Bjergsen. Like, man, TSM could have had some insane rosters. But then on the other hand, again, it is pretty funny that, you know, Reginald is maybe talking crap about North American Talent a little bit. He obviously wasn't able to get his hands on Vulcan. And, you know, maybe it's a little bit of poetic justice in the end that the guy who's kind of shitting on NA talent, undervaluing North American talent, and even just talking crap to Vulcan to his face, didn't get to end up with such a nice, sweet, shiny toy as Vulcan, because obviously he's proved to be an absolute beast. Now, I don't know if how serious TSM ever was about trying to sign Vulcan, because he was very expensive, and TSM historically has not been spending a ton of money. Obviously, they did go and spend a decent chunk of change on Sword Art, and for that amount of money, they definitely would have been able to get Vulcan. But at the time where Vulcan was actually a free agent, actually available, and actually being shopped around, not a free agent, but being shopped around by Clutch, I don't know if TSM would have been willing to spend that kind of money or anything like that, and obviously Clutch was wanting to receive a lot of money. So yes, I'm sure Reggie talked to Vulcan or talked to Clutch or whatever about trying to pick him up, and maybe even pitch the idea to Vulcan himself before, but was it ever super realistic? Was it something that was actually ever going to maybe happen or be considered? You know, I don't know for sure, but I think we can all just kind of wonder and be curious about what TSM would have looked like. How would that have changed the landscape of the LCS? Would TSM have been able to form some kind of super team that would have dominated the LCS? Because, I mean, we've seen TSM the last couple of splits. They made it to a spring final, you know, the series where Sven threw. They also have won an LCS title, and that's all without Vulcan. That's with Smoothie and Biofrost at support. If those teams were able to add Vulcan, which isn't a stretch, because again, Vulcan's a resident player. He fits into so many different insane lineups and rosters, and that is what makes resident players in the current format so strong, so valuable, and that's why they get these insane paychecks. You see that TSM, yeah, potentially would have been able to put together a roster very dominant in North America, and potentially even one of our teams that would have been able to go and do something at the international level, which would have just been crazy. And in the end, that's what the LCS is probably going to have to do. We're probably going to have to start forming some of these super teams, putting some of our talents together, because yes, we are a smaller region. We are a smaller player base. We don't have as much native regional talent as some of these other leagues. And then we're spreading it out all over the league. We have guys fighting with each other. We're not able to bring it all together. But if we could, especially on a team like TSM that gets insane viewership, and it would have been so good for the LCS in so many different ways. And it just kind of got me thinking that, yes, fire line by Vulcan saying, yeah, man, how are you going to flame me on Twitter when, you know, behind the scenes, it's like leaking DMs or something, you know, behind the scenes, you're begging me to come play for you, but on Twitter, you're saying, I'm, you know, a McDonald's worker. Hilarious line from Vulcan. Thought it was great. It seems like he's just saying everything right. He can't miss right now. He can't lose. And he just kind of keeps making Reggie look like a clown throughout this whole situation. But it did make me wonder, what if we would have got a TSM Vulcan at some point? That would have been absolutely sick, absolutely disgusting. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Definitely drop a like if you enjoyed it. I would appreciate it so much. Really helps me out the YouTube algorithm, helping get my content and my just videos and everything out to more and more people. That'd be absolutely awesome. One of the easiest and best ways to help support my channel if you're interested in doing that. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about this whole situation? Would TSM Vulcan have changed the landscape of the LCS? Do you think that would have been a good thing for the league? Would have been a bad thing? Are you glad it worked out like it did? I'd love your guys' thoughts and opinions on anything we talked about in today's video. Subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.